How my friend made me buy around 90% of a series of books and wasn't a friend. Years ago, I had a friend who wasn't a friend. We were a part of a group with 3 girls and 5, once in a while 6 boys. Elementary school, high school, then university. We liked SF, fantasy, a tiny bit of computer science, not quite nerds but close. In that group, only 2 people liked a certain author. He wrote a cycle of 40-plus books, other books not in the same world, all put together around 70 to 80 books. So my friend P and I could buy all the books twice, one set for him, one set for me. But we had a deal and it was his idea. I buy books 1, 3, 5, and P buys 2, 4, 6, and so on. Naturally, it didn't work. It started with the usual. I was to buy, for example, book 8 only once, because he had some stuff to buy. Then he kept that book, because he buys half of it. I reminded him I had bought it. No, I was wrong. He buys that half. Then he kept my books for months, or berated me for asking when I can read his half of the series. Then again, I was to buy books from his half. You can see the pattern. It has nothing to do with being poor or something. His dad worked in the same company as my dad, but on manager level, which meant a great salary. P wanted a new computer. P got a new computer just like that. So I bought close to 90% of the whole series, and he could afford his half, but decided not to bother. Then it was a request that I deliver my books to his house. He had his own car. I couldn't afford my own. But it was logical that I went there by bus, but he didn't grab the books driving his car. It ended with an explosion. My grandfather died, and my granny was in a very bad shape after almost 60 years together. The whole family took care of her. We took turns and scheduled visits so she wasn't alone. Bought her food, prepared funeral, all of that. It was like this. 1 week on Wednesday, my grandfather dies. Another book is available on Friday, but I decide to buy it after the funeral. P called me on Sunday, and it was a bad quarrel. I reminded him about my grandfather, which he already knew. He called me selfish and so on. So I went to buy the stupid book on Monday and tried to read it quickly and then share it with P, but left it alone because I didn't know what it was about. I was crying all the time. Next Friday was the funeral. All my friends were in church. They didn't know my grandfather but wanted to help me, support me, whatever. Not P. One person asked him why he didn't go to church. He didn't know my grandfather, so why should he be there? Okay. Only my other friends didn't know my grandfather either, but somehow didn't mind when I cried so much that they had to steer me bodily to the taxi, which I didn't see. And they had paper tissues for me. I had my own tissues, but they wanted to help even if it was a tiny bit. Weirdly, I remember them giving me tissues so clearly. The rest is vague. P called me around 3 hours after the funeral. Relatives were still around, which I explained. He was absolutely furious. Again, I was selfish. How dare I hoard the book? How dare I force him to wait for weeks? He demands I deliver the book right now, and he maybe forgives me. I repeated that relatives were still around and I wasn't his servant. He can grab the stupid book this very evening. He has a car. He can afford gas. He can deal with it. More screaming. How dare I? Blah, blah, blah. A cousin listened to a part of that conversation and suggested he would wait for P to hit his nose. I refused to deliver that book and kinda left the phone in another room. Next stage was a series of emails detailing my selfishness, which for good measure went to the whole group. That part backfired. One of my friends listened to that screaming match and told others what really happened. At that point, I wrote one email to P, telling him I'd block his email and phone number. He couldn't believe it. Another friend from that group told me later P berated me, an Avery person in our group who took my side, and he never arrived for the book. Once in a while, I see friends from that group. We try to meet at least once every 5 years and exchange gossip. They tell me to which meetings P wants to go, so then I don't go. I see him around maybe once every 3 years, but we don't talk. There's no point. I still have that series. Got the rest. 1. The part available directly after my grandfather's death is in bad shape. I don't think I'll replace it.